My colleague and co-host Arijit Barman is right now in Davos covering the World Economic Forum.
Annual meeting in 2025.
In these 4 ice-cold days, Davos becomes a financial, commercial, policy and investment blitzkrieg. Some of the most influential, wealthiest and most powerful people, companies and governments in the world fly to the snow-capped peaks of the Swiss Alps to hobnob, network, meet, drink and sign deals worth billions and billions of dollars. For Arijit, a master networker and scoop getter to boot, it's the world's biggest and most beautiful candy shop. So yesterday, day 2 of Davos, just as Arijit was about to share his 576th visiting card, perhaps with a Nordic investment banker and invite him to India, he spotted Adar Poonawalla. Now, Adar Poonawalla, the chief of Serum Institute of India, has been in the news in the last 5 years, not just for running the world's largest vaccine maker, but also his investments in financial services, packaging, insurance, and most recently the Hindi film industry by agreeing to buy 50% of Karan Johar's company, Dharma Productions. So, Poonawalla was invited to the ET Lounge. What followed was a conversation that ranged from Donald Trump's WHO pullout to the prospects of AI in vaccine development to his interest in global hotel chains and green energy. Listen in to the first of a few conversations from ET at Davos. It's Friday, the 24th of January. I'm your host Anirban Chaudhary. This is the Morning Brief.
Adar, thank you very much. Welcome to the ET Lounge.
Pleasure to be here and talk to you.
We meet on a day when Mr. Trump has done what he said he would, which is pull out of the World Health Organization, WHO. What do you make of it? Does it anyway impact the overall global health sector and Serum in particular?
Well, of course, you can imagine there are alarm bells going
all over the world.
All over, because you see a multilateral organization like WHO plays a very critical role in transnational standards and health standards, not just for vaccines, but for medicine and so many other things. Look, whatever views the president has on WHO is of course, his views, but certainly it could slow down a few things that are going on in the world. My concerns, I hope it doesn't happen, that, vaccine pre-qualifications and getting vaccines approved globally. So is, that global standard that most countries go by. This doesn't result in delays in getting new vaccines approved. Like, for example, we recently got our malaria vaccine for the African continent approved by the WHO. And, as a result, a lot of these countries will be able to access this vaccine at a very low price. And, hopefully we'll save a lot of lives. But let's wait and see. It's early days. It's only been a few hours. Let's see what happens.
Talking about vaccines on a larger picture, I think it was in this very particular forum, which is the WEF forum in Davos, where you had placed demands for what you said, vaccine equity. That, why should middle or lower income economies or countries face the kind of, multiple regulatory clearances vis-a-vis patents? And what's the progress so far? Since you made those observations and remarks, what's been the progress on the ground?
Well, again, something relating to the WHO, that they've been working on this thing called the Pandemic Accords, which goes towards bringing vaccine equity, not just during a pandemic, but perhaps during other times where, registering and getting vaccines approved and other medicines approved across the board, so that companies don't have to go to every individual country to get that done, because that takes time, that involves costs, various other things. So there has been progress on that. We have focused on, pricing our vaccines very, very low to maximize the access to the poorest nations in the world. We continue to do that, and I don't see that slowing down. That's in fact, doing quite well after COVID, and whether it's on testing, whether it's on surveillance, all of that. So we're in a far better place than we were during COVID.
So there has been progress since you. Okay, that's good. Now, Serum has made it very clear that you would primarily want to stay focused on vaccines.
Yes.
So if you could just talk us through what are the next big projects for the company in terms of next generation vaccines.
Well, ever since COVID, we've invested $2 billion in capex, in research and clinical trials to get new vaccines. And as a result, we've built facilities and are on the verge of licensing a bunch of vaccines. For example, the HPV and malaria vaccines are already licensed. We're looking at chikungunya and monkeypox in a year and a half's time. We're looking at dengue vaccine in about 2.5, maybe 3 years' time. A yellow fever vaccine as well. But, most of our capital and our profits just go back into building capex in India. And now we've got 2 campuses in India. And our capacity is around 4 billion doses annually. Of course, that's not being utilized. We're only at a $2 billion dose capacity utilization.
Right.
So let's see, with all these new vaccines coming about, that capacity will be used up because, after COVID, there was a lot of empty capacity.
Yeah.
So we just retweaked those equipments and things and made some more investments. And, the challenge still lies in getting clinical trials being done, quickly, because during COVID, that was happening very fast. Trials were getting done very quickly. But now we're back to the usual way where, it does take time to get those results. So we have to be patient and, next 3-4 years, you'll see so many more vaccines being licensed.
Right. But this 2 billion capex, it's a significant sum that has already gone in. Does that mean the capex cycle is over or you keep on incrementally?
This has been over the last, I would say, 5 years.
Yeah.
Ever since let's say 2020.
Right.
I would say now most of our funds will go towards funding the clinical trials of these vaccines because, you have to do trials in India, Africa, so many other areas. The capex cycle, I wouldn't say is over, but I would say 80% of that is done. And then maybe after another few years, we may have to again put in another big investment, to build more facilities for new technologies and messenger RNA. And, we're even looking at giving vaccines instead of needles through other devices, including patches. Now that's going to take 3 or 4 years to develop. You just put the patch on like you have in, whether it's an insulin or other things, and then that administers the vaccine.
Okay.
So, these are some of the new technologies, and we're working on AI also. So we're investing there to be able to predict what kind of formulations or speed up clinical trials in a way that you save a lot of time and costs. So that will be very good for the vaccine and pharmaceutical industry. And I've got some meetings here. The challenge there is that regulators around the world have to, acknowledge and agree with what the AI simulations have predicted and said is correct and will result in an effective vaccine. And because, if a regulator doesn't approve your vaccine based on an AI tool, then you have to still stick to completing all the traditional ways of completing your trials and research. So with research and clinical trials, I think AI has an important role, in our industry.
So typically, just to understand, for these kind of initiatives, what kind of investments are required?
Well, it depends. It could be about $100 million to begin with, where, you invest or co-invest with the partner to do that and develop a platform which can simulate these things. And it will vary from vaccines to vaccines. So we haven't invested it yet, but we have plans to do that over the coming years.
Okay. Right. Now, you were close to getting approval for your advanced BCG vaccine from the US FDA.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken. What's the update? If you could share some details.
I think that should happen in a few months. So, that's on track.
Okay.
Again, now with the US policies, I don't know how the uptake of vaccines going from other countries to the US is going to happen. Again, very early days. They've just sort of taken charge. So we'll have some meetings in the US and I think we can talk about it a bit later. Once I know a bit more.
Are you looking at the WHO pre-qualification for the HPV vaccine in particular?
Absolutely.
And any update on that?
Yeah. So we should be pre-qualified in 2026.
Okay.
by the WHO if everything goes well. And we're on track for that, because after that, you can export these vaccines to other countries. This year and, part of next year will be focused on trying to start supplying to the Indian government.
Right.
We've already launched this vaccine to prevent cervical cancer in women,
Yeah.
as you know,
Yeah.
very important for young girls to
Correct.
take this in India in the private market. So we'll see how that rollout also takes place. The Indian government is very eager to, this and get this out into girls.
But what's the update on that in the cervical cancer vaccine, for example? Because there were plans to sell it through the National Immunization Program.
Yes, so that'll happen this
yeah.
year.
This year it's going to.
Just being
Okay.
planned out because, when you roll out a new vaccine, the
Right.
states have to be prepared to take it. So some states will start first. There'll be pilot areas or certain areas of the state which will start first. You don't roll out a vaccine completely, nationwide like that. So you do it in phases.
Okay.
So by
Okay.
the end of this year, hopefully we should have the National Immunization Program taking the vaccine and rolling it out. And, the volumes will pick up beyond, say, 40, 50, 60 million doses in 26, as I mentioned.
Okay.
So you just have to scale
Right,
that.
right. You gave a roadmap of the next few years in terms of the new vaccines, which are at various stages of, coming to the market. Predominantly India, or it's going to be India and the world and like a 50-50 split?
No. Every vaccine strategy that we look at before getting into a vaccine, it has to have a global demand.
Correct.
Because if it doesn't, we can't, the volumes and economies of scale don't justify it. And then it's a chicken or the egg. So you
Correct.
can't then bring the prices down.
Yeah.
If you make 20, 30 million doses of a vaccine, if some vaccines are required only for certain regions or a country or two, then it's not economically viable or sustainable.
Correct.
So all of these vaccines, they always start off in India, and after protecting the national population and serving our nation's needs, then we go on to exporting it.
Right. Now, Serum also had a plan to make biosimilars of Keytruda with an alliance with an Australian company.
No, well, right now we're just focusing on vaccines.
Okay, so that has been shelved for the moment.
Let's see.
Now, what is your M&A strategy in terms of, what kind of technologies that make you interested? Are you looking at therapeutic vaccines, biologics, or, you've also invested in the mRNA platform?
Yes.
So
these are all that we've got now, a whole suite of different technologies and capabilities, viral vectors, subunit proteins, live attenuated vaccines, and now messenger RNA as well. So it all depends where, the trend goes. If certain diseases, can be tackled using, it depends. Not every disease you can't make a vaccine for certain diseases using certain technologies, or it's not efficient. So we'll find the right one to do it. The bottom line is we have that capability across the board with all these different platforms. But, in terms of M&A, we prefer partnering to share the risk and working with partners to co-develop or develop these vaccines, and then make the process very efficient in terms of manufacturing so that, you can be world leaders. In terms of investments and M&As, we do that outside of Serum,
right.
Whether it's, in the financial services
Correct.
business or, some of the other private equity
Correct.
investments we've made. And every 5 or 6 years, I like to churn that portfolio. And just now, we recently tied up with TPG
for your packaging.
Yes, for that
short,
one. Short Poonawalla. And we're doing something on an insurance company also, which will come into public domain soon. In Serum, we don't do a lot of M&As because, we don't raise capital. We don't want to merge with other entities and complicate the thing. It's very important for us to keep our independence.
Correct.
Because with that, you have independent and the freedom to make your own decisions. You're not beholden to stakeholders and investors, whereby, if Serum was listed, I wouldn't be able to make half the decisions that I do in terms of taking risks or, building capacity ahead of time and doing all these sort of things.
With the equity markets where they are, rather the IPO markets, there is no plan to revise the stated position that Serum will...
No, you never say never, but at the moment, there's really no need.
Correct. Why I also asked you about the M&A is because every so often, and I'm sure you face this quite a lot, whether it's a Cipla, whether it's a Biocon, it all keeps coming back. The natural home or the eventual home for all these companies seems to be Serum.
No, nothing like that. There were talks, which we had earlier and all that. With Biocon, we've just made an investment in Biocon Biologics. It's a great company that Kiran and her team have built, and there's no further strategic thinking on that. It's just
I guess in both, because there are possibly succession issues. I mean, there's always this question after Kiran.
So perhaps that's why the media may speculate from that angle. But they haven't, at least to me, mentioned any of that.
Oh, but coming to the packaging company, it's such a profitable venture. Why bring on board a private equity? What do they add to the table?
Well, no, we're just exiting in the sense that we've sold 35%. And the balance we'll exit in an IPO in 2 years' time.
Right.
So, we'd invested during the pandemic because at that time it was a very strategic investment where we wanted control on our supply chain, etc. But, as I said, I like to churn my capital from my investments in privately listed companies to then deploy those resources in we could do it in green energy, we could invest in data centers, we could invest in so many other areas to hedge our financial risks and portfolios. And, with privately limited companies, if you don't have a plan, either for an IPO or, a way to partner and exit, then you might get stuck. And then you don't want to be in a situation where you have a lot of investments which are marked up, but then you want liquidity also.
Right.
And a lot of, the liquidity I get from all of these investments, we're going to put straight into Serum to keep building our pipeline and other things. So Serum always needs a lot of capital.
Vaccines to start with, but then financial services, real estate, packaging, within financial services, insurance, the NBFC and the other pieces, real estate I talked about, diagnostics, clean energy you made with the alliance with Karan. What else is Mr. Adar Poonawalla?
No. So one doesn't want to get too diluted and distracted. I think, the investment with Dharma was more on passion, and having the power of storytelling is always can be very influential, and we've always been touched one way or another with films, since way back, as we can remember as children. And we'll see how to use that both internationally and domestically, whether it's for our group companies or for whatever else we want. And we also have plans to, build vertically our own music label, our own distribution in Dharma, and so many other things. So we don't want to focus just on films. Of course, that will be the main essence and thing around it. I think our focus will remain on financial services and Serum, as business entities. And I think it's important to be focused. A lot of groups which kind of diversify too much.
Yeah. They get diluted
beyond your core competence.
The attention.
And we don't want to invest in anything in terms of control.
Yeah.
We may make investments where we believe in those promoters and entrepreneurs, but anything where we take a substantial stake has to be where we have our core competence. And if I don't feel confident that we have that, then we don't want to get into that.
The green energy, venture that you back
that's very
small. Has it got to do with ESG?
I'll tell you what they're doing. They've got some contracts now to produce ammonia, and you've got electrolyzers and fuel cells that they make. So it'll be part of the electric and hydrogen kind of transition, whether it's in mobility or even in captive use for industry and things. And it's still very early stages. It's H2E, and I've invested 50% along with the promoter and partner CEO who runs it, Siddharth. He's here also. But that was, again, just an investment. We're not going to go big into green energy. I think there are a lot of great big groups looking at that.
Yeah.
We don't have the competence or the bandwidth to do that, or the capital. So, it's just a small investment.
You've also been very passionate about hospitality, real estate. I mean, the Pune, the hotel. Is there any interest, or is there any inclination to make bets overseas?
Yes, we looked at some hotels overseas and in India, but the valuations were very high. The reason why we didn't go ahead at the moment is because the interest rates are so high. So, typically speaking, if you look at putting down half the capital and leveraging half. Today, even in the US or in Europe, if you were to borrow, it's at 6-7% because, you're getting 4-5% fixed deposit. Back in the day, it was 2%. So you'd get money at 1.5-2%, 1.5 over LIBOR or 2 over LIBOR. These hotels typically yield, at least good 5-star groups and hotels yield 3 or 4%. So if you were to look at that in absolute terms, every year on an annual basis, you don't want to go out of pocket just to fund the operations of the hotel. You want the EBITDA of a hotel to be able to service at least 50% on acquisition on the debt. So if the valuation is beyond that, then it doesn't make sense.
Makes sense. Okay.
You only make money, real money, when you sell a hotel asset or a chain or a brand or whatever. Annually, it doesn't, throw up a lot of capital.
Correct.
So again, doing a leveraged buy or 50-50 kind of thing doesn't make sense. So let the interest rates cool off, which I think with the, multiple wars and things going on and supply chain inflations and so many other factors leading to interest rates being where they are, I think when they cool off, we can relook at that space.
Is there any white space left in the financial services portfolio?
So we're going to add a lot of verticals, but we want to go into gold loans, more into LAP, more into secured lending. We've been doing a lot of retail unsecured lending, so we want to shift and pivot to more of that. So again, in line with what RBI and others and just the general trend is going at housing, so many things like that. Sometimes one particular vertical sees stress, so you don't want to be overly concentrated and exposed to one area. So, you're going to see that being built out over the next 1 or 2 years. And right now there's heavy OPEX for building out and incubating these businesses within FinCorp. And we're already at a 30,000 crore AUM. In 5 to 7 years, I'm hopeful that we'll be at least 100,000 crores of AUM. And, so we want to just calibrate our risk accordingly and go sensibly and slowly.
And insurance is the other area.
That's general and health insurance. It's not life. It's Magma HDI. That's the company. It's privately listed. We may look at a stake sale there, and there's some discussions going on around that, which I don't want to discuss right now. But again, so we want to focus on our financial services and Serum, and the other things we had a housing company, for example, which we sold off to TPG a year and a half ago also. So I want to be very focused in what we are doing, and anything that is not core or not in our core strategy, I just, give it to other partners and investors to take over.
Because diagnostics is something that everyone thought you would really...
Well, we've got My Labs.
Correct.
We own 50% in that. We may bring in an investor there to grow that further. I like that space. It's doing well. A
financial partner or
it could be a strategic also who could bring in more technology or different things from the US. My Labs is very good at rapid antigen tests and other testing kits, and we've developed machines where instead of using a lab, a room this size to do all your testing, you can do it in a machine this big and very quickly. So we're moving in that direction, and they're doing well also.
Adar, thank you so very much. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And great plans and all the best.
Thank you so much.
That's it for today. Hope you like listening. This episode was produced by Vinay Joshi and sound designed by Amrit Reggie. The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursday and Friday on a listening platform of your choice. Have a good weekend. The external clip used in this episode belongs to its owner. Credits are mentioned in the description.